or he was a bullshit artist extraordinaire. I mean, he could whine, plus he loved wine and dining people. And but I wasn't that. But occasionally, well, we want to know the founder, the you. And even though you're not chairman or CEO, they want to know the founder. And now, then it wasn't so popular to be the founder. Now, because of the new generation of kids that have found, like the Zuckerbergs of this world, have founded companies, and so now it's a legitimate title. You're going to be founding director. Okay. Now, some of you will want other titles, but that's enough. As long as, remember, you're going to have the lion's share of the company until you get real big, and you're diluted down with people that have put in real money. It is growing the business, and when people ask you, if your directors ask you, well, where's our exit? How are we getting out? Is anybody going to? Okay, there's a script. We're going to get out. We're going to allow the market to tell us when the proper exit time is. We're not going to dictate arbitrarily some exit date or some exit price. We will let the market tell us. And will that be through an IPO, or in this country they call it a flotation, a public offering? It may be, but it may be more advantageous to the shareholders to have a strategic buyer for our exit. But we will let the marketplace tell us. So quite often, strategic buyers are willing to pay a higher multiple than a public offering, which is true, which is absolutely true.
Domain expansion.
Correct. And because these guys that join you in your initial board, the initial dream team, aren't likely to last to an IPO, which might be 5 to 7 years down the road. These guys are old, and they don't have the same energy I do. They're old. And as soon as they have a few million in stock that they can cash out, because once they're off the board, they can sell their stock whenever they want. They're under certain covenants, certain restrictions when you're on the board. And one of the things in America is that they have, when you're on the board of a public company, you can only sell stock through 144 placement, private, where you have to register it with a stock exchange to sell it. All major stock exchanges have a similar process. But once you leave the board, once Bill Gates left the board, Microsoft, he could sell his stock whenever he wanted. So even if they throw him out, he's public 5 years from now, all of a sudden he can sell all his fucking stock at once. So it's not the worst thing that ever happened, getting thrown out. Because the covenants and the restrictions for you to be able to sell stock in the open market only are as long as you're associated as a board member. As soon as your relationship as a board member ends, you can sell stock just like anybody else. You can buy and sell stock like anybody else. And and just as when I got thrown out of Great Western those many years ago, I was able to sell stock, and I had millions and millions of shares, and so it kept me not alive, but I mean, nobody cried for me when I left, with 20 million shares of stock. So even though I got tossed out, I still maintained a great deal of my wealth in the share price. But I know most of the guys, they want to go down with a ship like the Titanic. They want to, they want to be on the bridge like in the movies, having that's only in the movies. Okay, if you don't want to go down with a ship, you want to leave with dignity, with as much money in your pockets as humanly possible, and you want railroad cars full of cash. That's what you want. Now, in all these preparations, and we're talking the dream team, I still prepare approximately 1 hour for every hour I talk to you. I go through the slides, I change the slides. For the guys that have been to the seminar in the last couple of years, it's not the same seminar that they went through. We have more webinars now. We have new webinars. So I'm always practicing. I'm always preparing. And so should you. You should not get complacent and think the same pitch that you used 3 months ago is going to work today. And also, I keep apprised of current events. For example, you're rolling up healthcare in the United States or the United Kingdom. How if at all, does Brexit affect healthcare here in the United Kingdom? I don't know the answer to that, but you better know the answer to it. And all the information is in the public domain. How is the fact that the healthcare that represents 18 or 19% of GDP in the United States, how does that affect your industry? Okay, are there up and coming changes in the industry? KPMG, PwC, all the major universities all write newsletters about healthcare law and the changes they perceive to happen. In this country, I forget if it's Oxford or Cambridge writes one. University of Manchester writes one about healthcare and healthcare law. The government writes newsletters and blogs, and you should know. So you shouldn't be entering into, let's say that they're going to do away with a certain aspect of government funding for assisted living. You should know that because, one, the potential motivated seller is going to ask you, and or two, for sure, the bank's going to ask you, the potential financial institution that's going to fund. So you should know generally, and your accountants and lawyers write these things left, right, and center, and your industry experts will know. And that's why they're there. And so it's like the buggy whip. Back in the buggy whip manufacturers went out of business with the automobile, right? No more buggy whips, okay? Typewriters, Smith Corona typewriters went out of business when they came up with the first electric typewriter, IBM, and so on and so forth. And in certain areas, especially in IT and especially in artificial intelligence, there are waves, there's movements with huge change, just as the cloud is now, everybody understands, maybe not everybody, but a lot more people understand what you're talking about the cloud now than 10 years ago. Well, there are changes like that, so you have to keep up with generically, not specific. If there's something specific that's going to change your industry, then you should know about it. And you should know about it through your accountants, your lawyers, and your industry experts. So you don't just sit down after you learn a few words. You have to keep up. You have to keep up and keep prepared because you don't want to look like a doofus. You want to, you're not going to be like a scientist, a bioscientist where you understand, all the nuances, but you have to know the general movements of the industry. Healthcare is hot across the board. That's for sure. Healthcare is hot. And certain areas of healthcare are still, you're able to purchase them at reasonable multiples, 3 to 5 to 6 times EBITDA, cash flow, and some at higher multiples. IT is still hot, but at higher multiples, maybe 7 to 15 times EBITDA. And there's certain things, oil and gas, certain aspects of it are hot. For example, in America, the shale movement and that kind of thing with directional drilling. But you have to know the general things that are happening in your industry, but not specifics, When I got in the oil and gas, I didn't know anything. That's the God's truth. And now I'm supposedly an oil guy. I know a lot about the oil business, but I mean, certainly not as much as a petroleum engineer or some of these guys. And the good news is you will not be clouded. In other words, you will not you'll be in the forest, but you're going to be able to see through the trees. Most of the guys that are in these industries that have been in them 20, 30, 40 years, all they know how to say is you can't be done. All they know how to say, it's never been done before. And you're going to be the first one that comes to them with barely but 1, possibly 2 moving parts to finance deals that's beyond their comprehension. Once you get past the jealousy because you're doing it and they didn't, remember, they have to get over the fact that I'm in the business 25 years and I never thought of this. Once you get past that and you're utilizing them and you're milking them in a good way for all their information, I mean, you're going to make the whole group rich. You're going to make the whole group rich. And again, you're going to be the person with the lion's share and make the most money. And then you'll be like Peter here, the healthcare magnet. Is it maggot? Magnet. Okay, we know that. Now, these are the only books, if you have to, if no matter, it's killing you, you got to read something. You can't sleep at night because you got to read something other than the gigs you get. E-Myth, the first E-Myth by Gerber, U squared, I didn't know how to do squared. So that's supposed to be U squared, okay? Adversity quotient, Who Moved the Cheese, my $50 billion ebook, which is online, your first 100 million, which is online, and you're going to get a new copy. Release Your Brakes, Winning Through Intimidation, the first Winning Through Intimidation, not the modern day antsy-pantsy, artsy-fartsy one. I mean the first one by Ringer. What? Well, but it's still around. Tough-Minded Management, and another book, Tough-Minded Leadership by Joe Batten, who was my business partner. Think and Grow Rich, and Coach Wooden's Pyramid of Success. If you have to read something, you don't have to read any of this. But if you can't stand it, you can't sleep at night, you're not having sex because you're so worried that you got to read a book, these are the things you can read. These are the things you can read. But Marcus Bauer, when he was here for the hardcore, said, I've only read one book in my life, and that's Your First 100 Million, and that's it. And I have a new audio, First 100 Million, that Kat made me do last year, where I've updated editor's note through reading it, and that was the most painful exercise. I would rather have you pull my fingernails out than update that book, which I did, which I'm never going to do again. Okay. How to get good to great at the process. Practice, 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 practice. One of the, in my judgment, the greatest public speakers of all time was Adolf Hitler. And he understood PR, public relations, way before it was the norm. He took, for example, 1 million photographs of himself. Not him, not a selfie, but I mean, he had people take him. And he used to practice his speeches. I used to listen to his speeches. I used to listen to Churchill. I used to listen to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and I used to listen to John Kennedy. And those are who I patterned myself after. And you can just listen to me. I mean, but you have to project. You have to get it out past your diaphragm, out your lungs, out of your mouth. And all of you in this room can speak louder and more forcefully. Not yelling, but louder and more forcefully. Nobody's ever accused, well, what did you say, Dan? I couldn't hear you my whole life. And because I've always projected well. Now, many, many years ago when I was a little kid, one of the reasons I learned to project is because I had a high squeaky voice until I went through puberty, and then my voice dropped a few octaves. But I mean, you need to project. You have to act with confidence when you're talking to these potential board members, the accountants, the lawyers, the banks, and especially the potential sellers. You have to act with confidence. You have to act with enthusiasm. Otherwise, you're going to talk to a lot of people before you buy anybody. Anybody not understand that? Now, some people say, this sounds like me. Put this on.
You must convince yourself that the war is not lost. Give me your assurance, and you may continue as you have been.
My Shira, the war is lost.
The war is not lost! The war is not lost! The war will never be lost! We're going to beat them! We're going to beat them all! I will destroy Bolshevism! I will wipe out the scourge and pestilence of Jewish Marxism! I will defeat them all. I will defy the entire world.
That's how you're supposed to sound. I'm sure I'll get some hate mail about that. Who's my 5:30? 6? 6:30. Okay. Kat, do we have any, we eat in the castle today?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any questions on anything?
Is it in your study, sir?
What?
Is it in your study? Where is the
In my office.
office? Yeah.
Yeah. I will see you at 7 o'clock for drinks in the drawing room. Tonight you're going to see the Carnegie movie, did I pass anything out?
That's right. Just the affirmations, what we're supposed to do.
That's right, affirmations and your goals. and the list of the people that you talked to the last week and associated with those goals. And if there's nothing else, I'll see you at 5:30. At 5:30, we'll see you tonight at 7, guys.